Welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino. This week I'm joined by Mif and Paddy as we once again cover all things Celtic. Mif, welcome back. Your return follows another interesting weekend for Celtic and for Scottish football in general. What are you saying about it?
Oh Tino, oh Paddy, oh James, you're looking well. Yes, it's been quite an odd weekend and then subsequent events as well. So looking forward just to getting right into it and great to be back as well after another wee enforced break.
Funny how you come back after a defeat. It's almost as if as if you don't like the manager.
Couldn't miss this opportunity. Get a wee bit into Brendan, could I? No. Listen, I think as we'll get into, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances behind that.
Yeah, there is. Paddy obviously referring to the VAR decision to chop off what would have been an equaliser for Celtic. We'll get to all of that in just a moment. But that aside, do you have any great concerns about the performance, particularly the first half performance actually on Saturday?
Not hugely. I think it highlights the depth in the squad. And I think we actually seen that a little bit in terms of the reluctance to bring players on at the later stages of the game against Munich. We really wanted to hold off to that final whistle and make the changes for extra time. And whether that's, relying on your best players being on the park as long as possible or just try to keep the legs as fresh as possible for that run-in and the potential extra time. I don't know. I think what he's realised is that he's got a strong start 11 100%, and there's maybe 2 or 3 from the bench that can come in and do a job, and that Paulo Bernardo is a bit of a loss for us just now as well. So I'm not hugely concerned. As I said on the post-match yesterday, I think that after this midweek game we're coming into some breaks in between, which will definitely help the team going forward.
No doubt. If I was going to ask the very question though, Paddy talks about Paulo Bernardo and James Forrest remains out, and the hope is that those two lads are back in the next few weeks. But do you think we've maybe felt their absence, at least in a squad depth way, more than we thought we would?
Bernardo of last season, yes. Bernardo of this season, less so. I think he's been less impactful. That's not to say though, with more game, he was having a wee bit of a bumpy spell by his very high standards, and that's not to say he wouldn't have come through that and potentially have played more. Certainly I always feel he's somebody that in the Champions League stage probably see a wee bit more out of him than you do domestically. That's just my own personal opinion. Forrest, absolutely, because Forrest, for whatever people throw at James Forrest, one thing he is an undeniably safe set of hands in almost any situation for Brendan Rodgers, whether that's seeing out a game, whether that's chasing a game. He seems to know the tempo to play at and seems to be able to, one of those guys who can do it off the bench. It's a skill that not every player necessarily has. So, and then when you mention those two players and you look at from having that midfield quandary that you did have, you're now only one injury away from having no cover. So we've went from a position where, is the squad actually as strong as we think it is? Probably not. I mean, you're probably an injury away from Kwon getting recalled. So that's but you're laughing at that. That would probably be the next logical step. So if that goes, does it mean we're right to let Iwata go? I know he wanted to play, but it probably says we need more depth in that squad. And another thing I know we will get into further down the line, here we are at this point again with Celtic, we are tantalisingly close to having a starting 11 that's going to be outstanding, especially now that Jota's returned and we know that Kieran Tierney's coming home. So it's just going to be really interesting to see, is this going to be the time? Tino, you've been waiting for a couple of years where it's going to be masses of cash getting spent in the squad and, all these big names coming in. But is this going to be the summer where we actually go all out and we really, really cement our place and kick on, augment where we are just now?
Paddy, on that, it would feel like this summer will be the perfect opportunity. If Celtic are ever going to push the button, this would be it. The manager's in at the moment, settled, and hopefully that remains the case. He's proven his worth. He's shown that we can compete in the big stage, and we were obviously so close against Bayern from pulling off what would have been an incredible result. And Mif's right, with the addition of just 2 or maybe 3 key players, we could really make a statement. The money's in the bank, the potential's there, the foundations are there. This has got to be the time for Celtic to kick on.
Absolutely, and I think we've already started to do that. We've signed 3 players at a total of 28 million this season.
So that'd be Engels, Idah,
and Jota.
Yep,
That's the core of £28 million there. We're bringing in Kieran Tierney what are we going to put into the wages for Tierney as well? So I think it will have to be another summer of that, because we do know how close we are. The big concern is that the players that have shone this season, if the big bids come in for them, can Celtic say no?
Kuhn, Maeda, maybe even somebody looking for Engels, that kind of thing.
I think that sort of investment's a lot of money for us, but it's not a lot of money.
No, in the grand scheme,
in general terms. So
it is for Celtic.
But it's probably the amount we're going to need to get used to spending if we want to maintain that. I mean, I've not been on since the Bayern game.
I know.
So to be very, utilise my airtime here, Tino, I know you love me doing that. Immense pride in how we played. Very cruel. A new torture for us in Europe. Hitting the ball off a guy standing a yard out into the net. Fantastic. But immense pride. I mean, and degrees of comfort in the game, controlling where we wanted Bayern to play and how we stepped in and how we played through them. Bravery. Just loads to be proud about. But it means nothing if we don't use it as a platform to kick on from.
Aye.
Otherwise, it's just a set piece that we look back on. They'll be having an anniversary dinner for nearly beating Bayern in 20 years' time. We don't want that. We want there to be a 20-year anniversary dinner for something that we've tangibly achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel, whilst we should use it as a platform to boost on from, it has to be exactly that. And the time is now.
Yeah, I mean, we done a show on Friday night, Paddy.
Did you?
The tie, you were sorely missed. And the title was, what next for this Celtic side? And it's got to be a case of what's next, because you can't just go, that was great, wasn't it? Look how close we came, but didn't really achieve anything in the bigger picture. You've achieved something if you build from it, Paddy. If you do what you've done against Bayern over the two legs and then add to it. And that's got to be the key. They've got to, cannot stand still ever at Celtic. And you've got to do something more about it.
Well, that's it. The progress is that, as I mentioned on that show, I don't know if you listened, Mif, is that we're no longer talking about a first half performance where Callum McGregor's hit the post and we've ran Real Madrid close. We're talking about we've went toe to toe with Bayern Munich over two legs and we've come unstuck by one goal at the last kick of the ball. When you think about it, a 3-2 defeat in aggregate against a team who surely are considering themselves in the running for this year's tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a standout team in the tournament this year. I think there's multiple big teams, absolutely, but I don't think anyone, bar maybe Madrid, will feel that they've got enough to go and run all the way. Is
it crazy to think, had Celtic beat Bayern, which was doable, it was on the cards, had we beat Bayern, is it crazy to think we were also capable of beating what's a very good Bayer Leverkusen side?
Yeah, I would say it's crazy.
They've drawn. Do you think so?
I do.
What makes it so crazy? Bayern are 8 points clear of them.
I watched Bayern against Leverkusen the other day, and I think that what Leverkusen have had this season has been a lot of injuries at the start of their year. Whereas when I watched the game on Saturday night, they never get the job done against Bayern. Bayern are a very difficult team to break down, but they gift chances. Gift chances, and Bayer Leverkusen should have won the game on Saturday.
Xavi Alonso has never lost to Bayern Munich since returning, since taking the job at Bayer Leverkusen. But on our day, Celtic could compete with Bayer Leverkusen. I would argue.
I would agree.
And all of a sudden, you could find yourself in the quarterfinals of the Champions League.
Scene of a modern, classic Celtic European goal when you all went to Leverkusen without me.
Well, you were invited, you just chose not to come. But yeah, that Jota goal against Bayer Leverkusen. So Paddy, we're in a position, and as we've agreed, that it's a real platform for Celtic to kick on from, and that's where you'd like to think again that the work is ongoing at this moment in time to bring in the right players in the summer. Mif, on the exertions of Tuesday night against Bayern, is it little wonder that there is a bit of a drop in quality when it comes to Easter Road on Saturday?
No, it's emotionally it would have been very tough for the players. It was tough for the fans. And dare I say, tough for the manager and his backroom staff as well, because you're trying to lift the players, but ultimately, everybody knows the league's done. So you're going to these games, and then not only that, it's the dreaded 12:30 kick-off Saturday morning. Nobody wants to play. Nobody wants the games to be on at those times. Let alone the players. So myriad of different factors, and we've been unlucky not to come away with a point, but it's probably went to the brink in the game, and then we've started playing because that natural instinct kicks in, and then it's just all been a bit too late. There's been one kicked off the line, stuff like that. It's just one of these things that happen. And to be fair, this is a consequence of trying to go toe to toe with the better teams in Europe. Is it will physically drain you more than it will be if you have a controlled performance against a team you're expected to beat, i.e. Bratislava or whatever. So it's again being mindful of that with the future in mind, that you will need a strong squad to maintain your domestic dominance. Otherwise, results like this will become a common occurrence after a big European game, and we don't want to get into that habit. So it's all part of this sort of learning that we have to do for what type of club do we want to be. Do we want to be serious in Europe? Well, we need significant investment, but that also means having significant investment not only for our starting 11 but more depth in our squad.
Yeah, it's all part of it. Paddy, I'll read out a quote from Callum McGregor first of all, just in the aftermath of the game, and then I'll get your thoughts on that. He said the players know how demanding the league is and what you've got to do to win it. The good thing is we've been here before and we understand what it takes. As always, after a defeat, you have to take stock and take your medicine a little bit and find out what went wrong. We go again on Tuesday, and like you said, we've got another opportunity in the Cup against Hibs in March. And I like the fact that there's and has been for some time actually, a no excuse culture at Celtic. And whether it's from Callum McGregor, you might have heard Alistair Johnson speaking today, or the manager, they're taking it in the chin. Yes, obviously the VAR situation comes into play, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they're not saying that's the reason that we never got the point or the win on the day. No,
and I think it's absolutely valid for McGregor to come out and speak like that. I think that we do have the credit in the bank that we have put up such a strong performance against Bayern Munich. The players will feel the effects of that game, absolutely. And as Mif said, it's a difficult one to kind of get the motivation back up, get the players ready for the next game. But what you want is your captain and your manager to turn around and say, no, actually, that's a blip. That shouldn't happen. And we're looking forward to the next game to get it right. Ultimately, Celtic are very good at reacting to these results under Rodgers. But of late, even under Ange as well, I think that if there was a banana skin, or if there was any drop in the consistency that we've been maybe shown in a season, we pick it right back up. And I think that that's down to the mentality of the players, but more so our skipper as well. Yeah, and that's the thing, Miff. Whether it's a Bayern game on Tuesday and now the Easter Road defeat, Celtic are very good. They're very focused on what's done is done, win, lose or draw. After cup final wins in recent years, Celtic have gone, that's great, but we've now got a such and such to do, a European game or the next league game. And I think they are a side that are very good at focusing on what lies ahead rather than dwelling, good or bad actually, on what's been behind them. Yeah, I think that's just a culture that's built through the club over many years. Probably foundations of that are more with Rodgers' first tenure, and it was seen through bar obviously the one slip up. So for Rodgers coming in, picking the reins back up, and then seeing that legitimate progress in Europe, there's a blueprint there for the club to move on with, and part of that ongoing evolution of the squad and of the club is that you'll get instances like Saturday where you're coming up against a in-form opponent, highly motivated at home, early kick-off off the back of a very harsh European exit. All the signs are there that the players might be feeling a wee bit sorry for themselves. I know that's not necessarily an excuse, but at the end of the day, they're human. So I think you mentioned it there with Cal McGregor. He'd say that you take your medicine a bit, you get beat. Teams are allowed to have a go at us and beat us, that's what happens. It's up to us to stand up to it. We've probably left it a wee bit too late when we've launched the sort of onslaught. These things happen, but the key thing is how we respond. So we've now got a home game against Aberdeen. What have we got? That's what we're waiting to see. Yeah, and that's the great thing about football, Paddy. You've always got a game just round the corner to put things right, and we'll focus on the Aberdeen game towards the end of the episode tonight. Another guy, or one guy that we do need to spend a bit more time on, and it feels like we've done so every single show for the last number of weeks, is the man on screen, Daizen Maeda. He got his 24th goal of the season, should have been the 25th as well, with the equaliser. But what more can you say about this guy and what he brings to Celtic? And he was so important in Bayern as well. He's been massive, and it's the energy that he's shown as well. I think that you're getting everything from him. He's given every last bit of it in each game, and it's just the... You said this yesterday, it's just the selection of goals he's scoring. It's not just getting in behind because of his pace. He's actually shown an array of different finishing, and He's a real threat. He's a real threat aerial. He's a real threat getting in behind. He's a real threat with edge of the box. I was thinking back, someone played all the goals from our Champions League campaign. Goal against Bruges is an absolute beauty of a finish.
Yep.
Like, to bend it around the keeper the way he's doing. And I'm guilty of the early points in Maeda where I'm saying that I don't think he's meant that finish. And I generally didn't believe that he had it in his locker. I'm now starting to think that he's actually a really, really comfortable finisher of the ball. I'm looking at him one-on-one situations. I think back to that goal against Rangers at Ibrox, the one he get put through for the mistake from Morelos. And again, just a really, really composed finish. Keeper gets a hand to it, but he's still in those situations. That's the guy I want running towards the goal. I think he's very, very calm and composed in those areas.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. Mif, I was listening to the manager's press conference ahead of the Aberdeen game, and as I say, we'll focus on that towards the end. He was asked about the clean sheet record and the defensive record, particularly at Celtic Park. We've only lost 2 league goals at home, both to Aberdeen in that 2-each draw, and no one else has scored in the league at Celtic Park. And he was quick to give credit not just to his goal and his back four. He said this starts up at the top of the park for us. It starts with the front three, whether that is Maeda, Idah, Kuhn, Jota now part of the mix. And no one epitomises hard work at Celtic than Daizen Maeda.
No, he's phenomenal, and for us, it's a match made in heaven, Celtic Maeda, because he epitomises how Rodgers wants his attacking players to press. He then becomes an extremely valuable weapon in Europe, not only from the point of view of shutting down, but also generally there'll be more space to run in behind in Europe than you'll get here in Scotland. But also, I think more so than ever now, probably as a direct consequence of having his best goal return, but he's definitely feeling the love.
Yeah.
And the love of the fans and his love of Celtic is now in unison, whereas before there was maybe a wee split in the camp with him because he would be prone to taking somebody at the game in Rosehead with a left-footed cross. Then you remind yourself he's playing on what is effectively his bad side. But those instances, touch wood, have become rarer as the season's went on. He's obviously playing with more confidence, and like any footballer in the world, you start feeling the love for the fans, and you feel like you only need to go online after a game, and it did some of the parts class. But I mean, I've always loved him. That's not me getting a dig in there, and that is just somebody that if somebody puts that much effort into a game of football, I'm always appreciative of it. They may not be the best technically, but as you see, Tino, now in terms of technique, in terms of finishing, in terms of work rate, how can you not love the guy? He's just an absolute pleasure to watch, and a hero. He's a hero.
You were talking about some of the stuff you see online about him. I'll never forget after the sending off against Young Boys, and I'd seen a tweet. It was along the lines of like, "Don't you worry about it, son," because he'd apologised.
Yeah.
Don't you worry about it, Daizen, son. You can hit him harder next time if you want.
You can do
I'll still forgive you.
Oh.
But he's clearly he's in the form of his Celtic career, and he's taken some time. But you're absolutely right, Mif. The mistakes and the frustrations that you get from Idah, they're fewer and further between now. What you're getting more often than not is end product, whether it's goals or assists.
I'll ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer him through the middle or out the left?
He's equally effective wherever it is for me. Like I just want him to be on the park because Celtic are better when Daizen Maeda plays. That's the bottom line.
The point I was just going to make there is, what is indisputable is that since the day he arrived, he has been Rodgers' man.
Yeah, I actually said, I always remember saying with Ange and then Rodgers, when push comes to shove, when it's a big game, Europe or Rangers or Cup finals, he always gets picked. He was never I will bring him off the bench for his impact. Managers always started him, and his national manager favours him as well, over Kyogo and that whole debate.
Look at the spell last season as well, where it was kind of touch and go. They were neck and neck with us. He wasn't playing.
I know.
He was injured.
I know.
And then he came back from injury, and we kicked on from that point. He's massive.
He's so important to what we do. Build the statue, get him out there.
Get it out there.
Yeah, Jamesy first.
Let's get to that VAR call by Alan Muir. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's been heavily debated, and we covered it as well in the post-match, but it's worth it's worth getting your opinion, Miff, while you're here.
You really should listen.
I wish I had now.
And one of your rare appearances, we'll get your chat on it. Here's my question, my leading question on it. Is it mere incompetence by Alan Muir, or do you feel it might be something more sinister?
Listen, I mean, For me, I don't really want to go down that route. People will often show bias, even if it is subconscious. I think with that there's stills for and against the ball being out. So what still has been, I think Rodgers is quite right to say, what have you seen?
Mm-hmm.
And have you looked at everything? Because if you'd looked at everything, you'd have probably said, I can't definitively say it's been out. Which I think, would that go with the on-field call? Am I right?
Yeah, if you cannot conclusively say otherwise, then go with the on-field decision.
So what it does is, and James called this immediately as soon as VAR was implemented. To be fair to him, I know he's not here, but I'll give you a big shout out.
He'll love that.
He said, we've went for the budget version. So you're going to get budget decisions. You're going to get farce. And we have had farce. There's been a hell of a lot of farce with VAR in Scotland.
Yeah.
And an example of that is an example of that is it's almost like the referees, the SFA, have backed themselves into this position where someone is given that autonomy to make that decision without then subsequently being able to come out and explain how they've got to that decision. And what that does is it creates a discussion point. And I think most of the sensible chat online, I'll take away the extreme stuff, seems to be, you can't really say definitely that was out.
Yeah.
And that's not been wild. That's not been, pro Celtic, anti-referees, anything like that. Take Alan Muir out of the situation. I know people will go back and look at various individual decisions he's had against Celtic, right? And that might be the case.
And other clubs.
Right? That might be the case. And, I just simply don't want to go down that route.
No. Yep.
Just looking at that individual decision, you can clearly see that not every angle shows definitively that the ball's out, and therefore you can't really come to that definitive decision to overturn the decision that's been on the pitch. So you then have this debate. It creates this debate, and then because nobody comes out and explains specifically why, you're still hanging.
But they have. This is the thing. They've come out and said it was based on a factual decision from VAR, and this is the still that we've used.
The 18-yard line camera.
So it's based on the one.
There's two.
But again, does that not go back to the version of VAR that we're using then?
Correct.
Well, far light, as it's been termed as well. There's two big flaws for me, and it's the technology. So we don't have goal line technology or an additional camera, either of which would have helped you make a more informed decision.
Why would you not put a camera on the line? I'll never understand that.
But if they're restricted to X cameras per stadium and all that stuff.
Look at the one that they had at Fir Park that was Mummo's Tower.
I know. That was.
Do you know what I mean?
The other thing I've mentioned, so yeah, the technology isn't in place right now, and the protocols don't seem right, because the protocol should dictate that, again, if you cannot be 100% sure, as Alan Muir or whoever's in that seat that day, if you cannot conclusively prove contrary to the ref's on-field decision, then you go with that decision. So something's gone awry there. And I think what's going to be really telling, Paddy, and I do like this transparency from Willie Collum and this new approach, but it's going to be so interesting to hear the audio from that. Because if they say something like, I think it was out, or we're quite sure it was out, they need to be definitive on it.
But what's happening in these moments? And I take every team involved in that. Like, what's happening? Are the referees getting demoted for a game?
Alan Muir's been taken off duty for this week's round of fixtures.
Right, but so what I'm saying to you on that is it one round of fixtures and then you're back at it?
Like, Willie Collum will say there'll be retraining going on and stuff.
I'd like to think so, but I'm not going on about conspiracy theories or anything like that. I'm going on about Alan Muir's name's popped up an awful lot over the years for separate clubs, not just Celtic. Surely there's an issue that he's not doing his job right.
He's one of, I think, 3 full-time VARs. Your man Dallas, what's his first name again? Andrew Dallas, Alan Muir.
Is it? No, Don Robertson? No. Because he was on VAR.
There's one other that will come back to me. But yeah, I mean, again, this is a question for Willie Collum, and I do, as I say, I genuinely like his transparency. He's keen to front things up and say, we got this wrong, that could be better, this is nearly there, but we're not quite there, whatever it might be. But I'd really like to hear his response. And I agree, I've asked you the question, is it incompetence or something more sinister? I'm just playing that role because I need to ask the question. But I don't think it's anything down the road of cheating. But I do think across the board, we're still feeling to get right. How long has VAR been around here now? Was it October 22 or October 23?
2.5 years.
22?
Yeah, 23.
So, 22?
22
Think
apologies.
Good maths there by us.
I've seen a good example. Just we were, VAR's in the sort of discussion. I watched a bit of the Hearts St Johnstone game, and the Hearts goal was allowed.
Yep.
And you would have looked at it and went, oh, maybe the back foot's playing him on, but maybe the shoulder's just a wee bit over. Kind of the nuances that come with VAR, and my brother-in-law, a couple other people were in the house when we were talking, and whilst the shoulder might have been offside, he scored with his foot, which was onside. There's all those wee things, and also VAR has created an effective rule change around offside is now literal, whereas there used to be a benefit of the doubt element that was allowed, where the striker may have been slightly, now part of his body was still in line with the... So that's never really been addressed. It's just kind of went back to know you're either onside or offside based on the the shoulder, t-shirt line, whatever it might be. I think there's room for nuance there in guidelines, but the problem with that is it retains subjectivity. And ultimately that's what all of this comes down to, is that, Alan Muir looked at that photo and went, that ball's out. That's his opinion because he's the guy that's got that decision. And at some point in football, whether you have VAR or you don't, most decisions are going to be subjective. So are you any better for having VAR in that case? Or is it a case of just going, no, we back the officials? I mean, you could probably make a case that we don't want to go back to that, because even when they do have the technology, they still make the wrong decisions, and that's becoming apparent because of apologies that are getting given out to various clubs, etc. We seem as a football nation seem to have backed ourselves into this particular corner, and I don't know what comes next.
I think then, and I'm with you guys. I don't think Alan Muir is out to get Celtic. I do think it's incompetence, and I do, and that's the bit for me where Willie Collum needs to step up and say, well, do you know what? He's not just getting taken out of a round of fixtures; he's actually getting pulled away.
The thing is, he's made a decision based on opinion rather than something that had to be fact. You have to prove factually, was it in or out? And he's probably said, I think it's out, in my opinion. And that's what I'm saying, it's subjective. You could go down, you could survey 100 football fans and 50 might say it was out, neutral fans, 50 would say it's out, 50 would say it's in, and it can't come down to that. So that's something that's got to change. Well, listen, we'll kick on. It's going to rumble on, and we'll wait with great expectation on Willie Collum's next video. The good thing is the manager seems very relaxed about it. I talked about Callum McGregor earlier on not falling into this excuse culture and blaming VAR or anything else for the defeat on Saturday. And amongst a couple of quotes, Brendan Rodgers says, everyone makes mistakes and there's not a great deal we can do about it now. So he's very pragmatic about the whole thing, and we kick on. Let's cover some lighter news before we kick on with some other Celtic stuff. There's been some changes managerially in Glasgow. Rangers finally sacked Philippe Clement after what all in all was a disastrous reign. Started with such great hope, but ultimately, if you can't beat Celtic consistently, you're going to fall. That's just the way things go. A couple of quotes again from Brendan Rodgers on Philippe Clement's sacking. He said, the expectation here is relentless and you have to win. Sadly for him, it hasn't worked out in the way he wanted. Like it is for any manager, I'm always disappointed when someone loses their job. Philippe been in there for the period of time that he has been. I'm disappointed for him as a coach. And then going on to talk about the requirements to be a winner in Glasgow, Brendan Rodgers says you have to be winning and show that consistency to win. There's a relentless pressure on you to win at Celtic and Rangers. Expectation is there, and that doesn't stop on a daily basis. So you have to then come out and be a consistent winner. Before we talk about the replacements, which I'm looking forward to, I just want your thoughts very briefly, Paddy, on Philippe Clement's time at Rangers.
I just going to miss him.
Miss him dearly.
I'm upset. Upset. Disappointed.
What do you think, Miff? It didn't work with it?
Well, it started off really well, but it's now becoming a bit of a familiar pattern, which I think reflects more on the players than it does the manager. He was clearly given a brief to come in and reduce the wage bill, bring in players that... How
many times did we say that?
No, I know, but
I know, it's hilarious.
It's just, they get that new manager bounce and then all of a sudden, or should I say, bouncy, and then it's a case of you go through that cycle. I believe there is a effective sort of kind of chart that people post of the various places
stages
that you get to in the Rangers cycle, and now we're back at manager sacked. So, we're actually beyond that now, and I'm sure that's a point that we're going to get
back again.
But for Clement's CV did stack up before he came. He'd done, if you get appointed the Monaco manager, you must have been doing something right.
I think he won 3 titles in Belgium.
He'd won titles in Belgium, which would have probably would have been more that winning a league that's effectively a 2 or 3 horse race. The requirements that you would have around that. But as we know, Rodgers has touched on it because he's subject to it. It's absolutely relentless. It's cutthroat, and going away from home and picking up a draw after a European game in most other cultures would be absolutely acceptable. Here, it is a disaster. It's a disaster. So that takes a bit getting used to. Who knows what's happened with the recruitment, because all the players that he's brought in seem to come and go in and out the starting 11. And for the most part, the game of New Year aside, there's been a lot of chat that's not been backed up on the pitch, and that's not just something that's landed at Clement's door. That there is this constant need to have that bravado from Rangers, when I just don't understand why humility is not the approach, and just saying this is where we are, this is where we need to build to, rather than always needing to, they've always got the best keeper in the league, the best centre half in the league, the best midfielder in the league, the best striker in the league, and yet they always finish second.
Yeah, always. The thing that where I think he really came unstuck though was particularly his post-match comments. See, after defeats or draws or whatever, the havering and the excuses and all that stuff.
XG was a big thing.
Big thing for him. It's where he really came unstuck. Paddy, I'd love to spend more time on that, but I'd really like to spend more time on his replacement team. So you'll have heard today that
I would rather you'd have went to Paddy first on come on and then come back to me for the for this chat. But anyway, sorry.
But listen, just because it's your first show back,
I know this is a bit I'm itching for.
Aye.
The caretaker management team reads as follows: Gers Hall of Famer Barry Ferguson,
staunch.
Neil McCann,
staunch.
Alan McGregor,
staunch.
And Billy Dodds. What is that all about? This is laughable, isn't it?
Clueless.
What's going on?
Absolutely clueless, and I'm all for it. I can't wait to see what happens here. I've just got this image, the scene for Tune the Fat, where the managers getting copied off the boy next to him, but it's all 4 of them copying each other and not knowing what to do. And Alex Rae is probably still sitting there trying to get involved, even though he's been told to go up the road. I
think any other circumstance, Alex Rae would have been added to that management team as well.
Oh, 100%.
Had he been available, unfortunately he was busy getting sacked from the job that's about to happen. If it's a devastating blow for the rota at BBC Sports Sound.
I know. I seen somebody saying that Sports Scene will now come live for the Rangers dressing room. Just post match.
Stephen Thompson.
I'll be surprised he'll be getting a striker coach. But for me, it seems to me Patrick Stewart's went online, read about somebody that needs to know the team and the city and all that nonsense, and went,
real Rangers man.
You want staunch? I'll give you staunch. I'll give you more staunch than you can handle.
But
so here you go. There, stick that in your brogues. You're getting our Barry. You're getting wee Terry.
Griggsy.
Do you know what I mean? You're getting Griggsy.
You're getting Griggsy.
They know what it's all about. They know what it's all about. And that's that. That's the route that they've went down. Listen, they have nothing to lose because they're looking at it from the point of view, get what is instantly recognisable as Rangers men in. So what the fans have been crying out for. But I've seen a lot of slating at Alex Rae. What's Alex Rae doing? That type of, what we did with John Kennedy. Listen, we all did it as well.
I did.
I did.
Started a podcast about him.
This is what kind of comes into the equation. I think the basis of this is quite simple. What got Clement the sack, rather than the poor results, was the stadium was empty. What Rangers can ill afford is
an empty stadium,
a half-empty stadium for the remaining home games. What would get fans back on board, at least in the short term, until a replacement's made? It'll be Barry Ferguson, it'll be Neil McCann, it'll be Billy Dodds, and it'll be Alan McGregor, because fans will want to turn up and see them and want the, like they did when McCoist was manager. They'll want the team to do well for them, because right now they're against the team. So for me, I think it's purely just to ensure that fans come back through the gate.
That maybe works for a few weeks, and they'll be out in force for the first home game, whenever that is. But ultimately, you've got a failed Clyde, Alloa, Kelty Hearts guy fronting things in Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, failed Dundee, Alan McGregor, pass, Billy Dodds, running the mill championship manager in Scotland. This is on a football level a really horrendous appointment. And actually, it's symptomatic of what Rangers have done for the last 12, 13 years, is they've played to the gallery, and they'll get what they get with this kind of appointment.
Ultimately, Dodds is the most successful. He got Inverness to that Scottish Cup final with Ange. I think it's a strange one. It really is. I think for me that they've been crying out for this true Ranger, as they like to put it, and this person that's going to be the guy that's going to bring them back to where they belong. They've been, every time it comes to looking at a new manager, that's what they've wanted. They've got 4 and they're not happy. They're not happy with it again because the track record's not brilliant. You're talking about the half-empty stadiums. One of the boys was watching the St Mirren game at the weekend, and they said it was brilliant. It was that quiet, you could hear everything the fans were saying, and it was apparently a boy like that. I can't believe what I'm watching. I can't believe what I'm watching.
But just to pick up on that, has the reaction been relatively negative?
I don't know.
It's been a bit of both. It's been a bit of both, honestly. Like a few are just saying, give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? But a few are like, I can't believe this.
I think it could get worse for them on the field. That's the worst that could happen.
As much as there's, a bit of hilarity for us, and I'm in that camp that whilst it has amused me, I don't think they do have anything. This season has been so much a write-off. I suppose you're thinking Europe.
They seem to turn it on in Europe.
You could get embarrassed in Europe by that. You could get embarrassed by Celtic a couple of times, and they've obviously got no Scottish Cup to play for. I think it could be a horrendous move. I really do. I think it's a shocker.
We were talking after the post-match yesterday, though, and there's almost an element that is potentially the players gave up with Clement a long time ago, and actually they know within themselves how to play with each other in terms of when it comes to Europe, and they step it up a bit because they have had some decent performances in the Europa League, and you would not be surprised if they go and do something against Fenerbahce, and I don't think that maybe comes down.
I'll be surprised.
No, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Surprised.
It's a weird curse with that tournament.
It's going to be interesting to see it, Liz, and as Mif says, it's more staunch than you could ever imagine, but we'll need to see how it all goes. The first job of the new Dream Team, Mif, will be stopping Celtic winning the treble. That will be the target. They can't do anything about the Scottish Cup. All they can do is try and stop us from winning a league where we are now 13 points clear with 11 league games to go, and that's going to be some shift for them.
Yeah, but again, I think the main driver here is for people to come back through the gates at Ibrox Park.
Would she, but
you need to remember that's there. That's like as a point. I don't know. I was going to say Neil Lennon, but better not go down that route. But you know what I mean. That's why a management team of Neil Lennon, Peter Grant.
I just think those
Derek White. I don't know.
I think obviously the opportunities he's had and he's failed, and I think they're just a little bit. Even some of the stuff that he's come away with his columns as well. Like I've spoke to Clement. This guy's a real deal. He knows what it takes.
Listen, penny for Tom English's thoughts.
Oh, jeez, what about that as well? Aye.
What's he said?
Have you read his piece that he did last year?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Talking about Philippe.
Oh, and then without any shame, he's written a sort of article. If you track to the BBC website, I looked at it today, and
an exit.
Oh, I mean, genuinely, that man has no shame. Tom English, no shame.
Right. Let's move back to Celtic. As I say, Paddy, we're 13 points clear, 11 games to go. We had a laugh because we'd done a pre-match before the Hibs game, and we talked about 10 wins to the treble, then we get beat the next morning. But it didn't really matter because they also get beat. So we're now 9 wins to the treble, and just the maths on that, let me get this right. If we win our next 6 league-wise, and that includes the game against Rangers on 16th of March, Paddy's weekend, that would leave us a minimum of 16 points clear with 5 games to go. Therefore, you're good to go. Scottish Cup-wise, you would potentially have 3 games, quarter-final against Hibs, Sunday 9th of March, followed by a semi and a final at Hampden. So 9 wins to treble now, Paddy. So we're on the right track, aren't we?
We are. And as I said, I think it'll be welcome for the team to maybe get those little breaks in between games now, instead of it always being that relentless 2 a week.
Is the next international game after the Rangers game?
Correct.
International break, sorry.
Yeah. And I think, well, actually, no, I think maybe the internationals run up to the end of March. I'll need to look at that again.
Okay.
But
so 16th of March for that game.
I think it's an exciting month for us going into March, and I just think that, as obviously we've got Aberdeen tomorrow, that'll be a tough one for us. They've found a bit of momentum in their last two games. A late winner at the weekend will do them the world of good, so they'll be feeling good. They'll also be kind of thinking, are we that far away for Rangers? They've got some difficult games coming up as well, so they'll be up for it tomorrow night. We just need to be up for that. But aye.
Yeah, Mif, it's quite simple for me to say 9 wins from the treble, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into getting those wins, and Paddy's right. So we've got Aberdeen tomorrow, we've got St Mirren, tea time kick-off on Saturday, quite unusual, 5:30, and Paisley on Saturday. Then we've got Hibs, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes next time around against them. That's Scottish Cup on the 9th of October, and then it's March, and then it's Rangers on the 16th of March, and it's tough games, as I say. I'm simplifying it. They're hard fixtures in their own right. Yeah,
it's a difficult run, but as Paddy said, it's also an exciting run because it's going to make or break the hunt for the treble. So, but home tie against Hibs, so you have to fancy us there, albeit that Hibs will now be buoyed by the fact not only their recent run, but having beat us at Easter Road.
Yeah.
It's yet to be seen what sort of response the new management team get from Rangers, as much as we find it funny just because of the lack of managerial success those guys have had, and the very obvious reason that they've been appointed as merely as poster boys. In the short term, as I say, it could work domestically in allowing them to beat teams that they should have already been beaten anyway. But for us, having the Aberdeen game at home, the Hibs game at home, the Rangers game at home, that's where we really are in control of our own destiny. So go and win those games, and that really sets us up to really stride on for that treble.
Paddy, what's the biggest blocker to us getting the treble?
Ourselves, always. I think that's the only thing that comes up against Celtic, is if we have performances where you look at Hibs on Saturday, we can give it the excuse. Obviously, it's been a tough one against Bayern, but our squad management is key. Keeping players fit is key. We have the best team in the country, so it's up to us to go and win what we need to win.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Quick glance ahead then to Aberdeen specifically. So it's Tuesday night, 8 o'clock kick-off at Celtic Park. I mentioned earlier on, they're the only side to have scored against us in the league at Celtic Park this season. Those 2 goals back in October. After a really horrendous run of form, though, they've finally picked it back up, as you say, Paddy. They've won 3 in the bounce. They beat Dunfermline in the Scottish Cup. They beat Dundee and Kilmarnock in the league. Miff, what are you expecting from them on the night?
I think similar for the previous 2 games we've played them in the league, that they'll be tough to break down. They'll have their game plan. I think they escaped to a point against us last time because we both didn't take our chances, but also were fairly weak defensively in specific moments. I think if we cut that out, the hope would be that we'll create enough chances that we'll win. But as Paddy said, it's really down to us. It's down to us starting the game in the right way, playing at the right tempo. Because Aberdeen always bring a fairly sizable support with them, cheer them on. It's up to us to set the tone, early bells, hopefully get an early goal, and that settles us down. But I always like the games against Aberdeen. There's always a fairly decent atmosphere at Parkers.
Yeah. And Brendan Rodgers said that himself. It's always a decent fixture to look forward to. Paddy, there was obviously a few changes, 3 changes made to the lineup on Saturday. Didn't play out in the way the manager would hoped or have hoped, and he made those changes at half time. One guy I want to speak about, and he's come in for a fair bit of stick after his performance at Easter Road, is Adam Idah. He's a guy who has had some huge moments in a Celtic shirt, cup finals and some European stuff, Villa Park recently and other things into the bargain. But what he has developed a reputation for is being inconsistent. You don't know what Adam Idah you're going to get. I was looking at his stats. He's played 40 times this season, obviously not always from the start, particularly when Kyogo was around. He had 13 goals and 1 assist. But you wouldn't know from one game to the next what you're going to get, and that's got to be a concern. I know he's young-ish, is he 23, something like that, but the real Adam Idah is really impressive. The other one, not so much.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it. I was laughing at the tweet from the guy that was going off the back of Rodgers' comments about them having a beer after the game. They said, "What time did Adam Idah stop drinking the beer?" He wasn't great on Saturday at all. We know what he's capable of. You're spot on. I think on his day and when he's firing all cylinders, he's a great addition to our team. And I don't know, does he believe in himself? Does he believe in himself that he could be the main striker? Is he worried about the fact that Maeda's potentially could come in and take that starting position the more that Jota gets up to full speed? Is he looking over his shoulder at the fact that we could be looking at, well, we will be looking at another striker coming in the summer? Is the price tag weighing down on him? I don't know. It's up to Adam Idah to really show what he's about. I do see the attributes. I do see the ability, in my opinion. He's scored some big goals. He's remained calm. He's remained composed for us at crucial moments. But he's also failing to really win me over in certain games as well, and that is a concern.
Mif, do you think there's a confidence issue there?
Lack of consistency, which could come from a lack of confidence, and pun intended, probably a hangover from Munich, in the sense that I think it was a 5-5 prior to that, and then dropped for the game. You know, strikers are a fragile breed, and if you felt that shirt's been yours, and then at the biggest stage it gets taken away from you, maybe psychologically he's let that affect him more than maybe other players would have and would have in his position. I don't know. I'm just speculating that, because the run of form that he was in, and to then produce what he produced at Easter Road, was such a sharp decline in what we'd been seeing recently. It does make you wonder, is it a mentality issue? Is it a confidence issue? Whatever it might be, I think I've seen enough to say I think he can be our number 9, you know, and dare I say will be. But I think what he also has to understand is for tactical reasons that may not always necessarily be the case. When you're at a big club like Celtic, can't really chuck in a wee off day. It just doesn't get accepted. So as long as he continues to do that, that will then create doubts, not only with the fans but also with the manager, because the manager needs players that he can rely on.
I think the doubts for the manager are already there.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
The manager will have been heavily involved in bringing him back permanently to the club, won't he?
Yeah, played a part, but I think we were silly and we were clutching at the end of that transfer window, and how far it dragged on. We were silly in the negotiations there.
He's also a player who's the end to his Norwich career played out with a lot of flack coming his way from the fans. They were calling him lazy and not interested and get rid kind of thing. But the flip side, Paddy, is that he's an international striker. He gets picked often enough for Ireland when he's fit. He's a starting striker for them. As I say, cup final goals, massive European goals, two goals at Villa Park on the big stage, amongst many other big moments for Celtic. He dragged us back into the title race with a double against Hibs, 2 massive penalties, double against Motherwell at Fir Park, 2 big goals, a phenomenal header on that particular day. He's got it all in terms of the attributes needed to be a footballer, at least in terms of what we can see. But whether there's a confidence thing, a mentality issue or not, I'm not sure. And it's frustrating, and it'll be a frustration for Brendan Rodgers, because he will see the unlocking of Adam Idah has been a huge part of the puzzle at Celtic if you can get him firing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we have said, and it's taken nothing away from what he does given Celtic, he does have it in his locker. It's up to the manager, it's up to the coaches to just find that way to unlock it and make sure that he is playing consistently. You mentioned about Daizen Maeda feeling the love. Is Adam Idah feeling the love? Is he feeling like he's the main man at Celtic? I don't think he is at the moment, but Daizen Maeda played himself into that and worked hard to get into that. There's a way to get there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we need to see a bit more from Idah.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see how it plays. Mif, in terms of the lineup then, so the manager's now got a quandary because he made some change. I think the 11 that started against Hibs should have been capable of winning. They've proven, it's not like we're throwing in kids here. Greg Taylor's very experienced. Adam Idah we've just spoken about. Who's Luke McCowan, capable absolutely domestically in Scotland. So what does he do now? Does he feel that he has to go with his quote-unquote strongest 11, the 11 that played the second half at Easter Road, or does he now get leeway to make changes again? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, listen, I think all that we've got to aim for domestically, so we just play our strongest starting 11 when available. I don't think there'll be much change to that now. Whether Adam Idah finds himself in that or not will be.
So as a big fan, a genuine fan of Greg Taylor, where does he?
I just think that whole situation's kind of festered a bit to the point where
it's got messy.
Getting a wee bit messy, a wee bit toxic towards him. I'm not a fan of that naturally. I do think he's got enough credit in the bank where I don't think it has to be so. visceral towards him. But at the same time, maybe I'll advise him being selected. Everybody wants to remain professional at these times, but you know, it was bad enough when he was, I say a committed player, he still is a committed player, but you know what I mean, when he was tied up in my contract, he was subject to a lot of stick, and on occasion rightly so, naturally, but even sometimes when he wasn't the worst man in the park, or he was having a fairly decent game, people would still hone in on individual mistakes that he made. Now those mistakes are going to get highlighted even further, because he's in a really a no-win position. I'd have probably just took him at the firing line, but Schlupp hasn't been playing regularly. He's went away, gave us an outstanding performance in Munich, so I do understand why Taylor's come in. And like you say, Taylor's good enough to go away Easter Road and produce the performance he needs to help the team come away with 3 points. He's obviously fell below his usual standard, and it's starting to get a wee bit messy now.
He'll be feeling it. He'll be absolutely feeling it, and I totally get that. Yeah,
on paper, Jeffrey Schlupp is the better player, but the manager was speaking about that was Schlupp's first 90 minutes of the season against Bayern Munich, no less, and it's therefore a completely logical move to play Greg Taylor, who you absolutely know what he's capable of domestically, and I would say that's the right move. But now what you've got is a player in Greg Taylor who's probably getting as much flack as at any time in his Celtic career. You know, there's blame for that first goal at Bayern from some, and you know, Bridle from the show thinks that he's to blame for that, and many others, unfortunately for Greg Taylor. And he's in this real horrible place that players find themselves in throughout their career, as being in the final few months of your contract. Nobody knows what you're doing. You don't know whether to stick or twist yourself, and fans start to maybe go heavier on you. He's not committed. He's not doing all the things that he should be doing. What do you see the next few months is looking like for Greg Taylor?
Well, I think it's a bit of a two-way street for him. I think you made a good point on the post-match yesterday in terms of, we look at the left-backs that have come in and gone, and they've not been able to wrestle the position off him. Now, it's not through, for me, my opinion, and listen, I'm open to everyone else's opinion on this, it's not through Greg Taylor being necessarily the better player and always his jersey. Celtic have looked to replace Greg Taylor in numerous seasons and not hit the mark, and that's been a big thing for me in terms of those players have found it too much for them. They've not stayed. Greg Taylor has remained ever present, and credit to him for that. But what he has been lacking in is the level up when it comes to Europe, the level up when it sometimes comes to games against Rangers where we fell short. But on the other side, I do think he's been badly advised, and if we are hearing about the demands of his contract being at that amount, you're not going to get that to play second fiddle to Kieran Tierney for 25 grand.
The argument is something up towards 25 grand to be a backup. If that's accurate,
it's not going to happen.
It doesn't make much sense.
No chance.
It's a difficult one. I think just in more general terms, Mif, if you've got a player who you know has, whatever their level of ability is, if they're not playing towards that ability, you're well within your rights to be critical if they're not putting in the shift, if they're not committed enough and all those things. The opposite, though, I think is what applies to Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor has got a limited ability, but he always gives you that ability. He gives you his everything. You can't fault his commitment in a Celtic shirt. And I think he gets grief for just not being a better footballer. You are the footballer you are, and he gets grief for not being, I don't know, Maldini or something like that.
But it's highlighted more because it's coming to an end.
Yeah,
and I think it's not fair on him. And I would never give the guy grief. I've said countless times, seasons gone past, I don't think he's good enough.
Yeah, it's also not often he gets compared to Maldini. I don't know where I was going there. I couldn't find a better example, but I do feel for him because I think he gives his all in a Celtic shirt. But I think it's he can't be blamed for. You've said this before. He can't be blamed for being the best left back at the club. He's been the best left back or the best option at left back for a number of years. It's now time, I think, for all parties to move forward. Greg Taylor would go with everyone's best wishes, I think, and hope.
Yeah.
And Celtic can then move on into the Kieran Tierney era and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, listen, I'm a fan of Taylor, have been. But like I say, it's a fairly unique situation that everyone finds themselves in, fans, Taylor himself, and also the manager. So who's to say what's right and what's wrong? And naturally, after a defeat and maybe a less than stellar individual performance, it just gets magnified all the more. So I would imagine now, with the European obligations out the way, that Schlupp will be the starting left back until the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case. Final thoughts on Aberdeen? Any kind of final changes in personnel And if not, just your scoreline prediction, Paddy.
I think we'll see Hatate come in for McCowan, and it's nothing against Luke McCowan, but I think he'll want the strongest midfield to play in tomorrow with Engels and McGregor. I'd like to see Engels kind of replicate what he done against Munich in a sense, and almost just give Callum McGregor the free rein with the ball. I thought that was really impressive to see against Bayern Munich, and a really strong performance for the captain. I think he dictated the full game for us when we were on the attack, but also organising us off the ball as well. So another thing maybe we're starting to see what Engels can do if he just drops that little bit further back, which is exciting.
Yeah. And a scoreline?
I'm going to go 3-0 Celtic.
That's my scoreline.
Well, I'm not changing.
I'm not changing either. 3-0 for me as well. Mif, what do you think?
Tight game, 2-1 Celtic.
Tight game, 2-1. It's going to be one to look forward to. So Tuesday night, 8 o'clock kick-off, Celtic Park for that one. It's been a varied show, lots of kind of different elements to it. Paddy, but your final thoughts for the week?
Yeah, I just think as we've mentioned, it's just looking at that running now, as you say, 9 games, Tino, and I think hopefully an exciting run-in for us. We want to do well, we want to progress in the Scottish Cup, we want to be back at Hampden for the semi-final, for the final, dreaming of the beer garden in the sun before those games, after those games. What you want to sit and think about in a cold February night.
Mif, your own final words.
Well, it's lovely to be back. Yeah, I think we just kick on for here. That's the hope, and a great game to look forward to in the Aberdeen game. So yeah, the prizes are there to be won. It's just down to the players to go and see the job through.
Yeah, tough games ahead, starting with Aberdeen tomorrow. But that wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to Paddy and Mif, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday with the post-match show following that Aberdeen game, and then again on Friday ahead of Saturday's tea time kick-off against St Mirren and Paisley. And don't forget to get involved at the Celtic Exchange Plus if you want to enjoy ad-free listening for every episode we do, early access to the Celtic Exchange Weekly on a Monday night, and the chance to win this season's home shirt complete with Jota 7 on the back. There's a link to all of that in the show notes. But until next time, have a brilliant week. We'll see you all again really soon.